In the October 30th, 1957 edition of the Greeley Daily Tribune, there is an interesting story involving an entity which seemed to haunt a high school mere days before Halloween. It was the evening, Monday, October 25th, 1937. Bill Matson, a janitor at Greeley Central, claims he encountered a strange phenomenon that he cannot explain. At about 5 o'clock, a few hours after school had let out, a time when most of the kids had gone home, Matson was finishing up on the third floor and getting ready to go home himself. The floor was deserted and dark. As Bill approached the entrance to the tower room, heading to the fourth floor, he claims he heard a strange noise. Not being able to determine whether or not it came from the tower room, I thought nothing of it, he told newspaper reporter Craig Vito. Suddenly something glided slowly through the door, seeming to appear from nothingness. I cannot describe the thing. It was in the form of a man, but composed of a thin, transparent vapor. It disappeared as suddenly as it came, but not before I could let out a yell that rattled the windows. Head janitor Charlie Stevens claims that he heard the scream and began running towards the direction of the sound. Near the tower room, he found Matson standing wide-eyed. He appeared to be in a state of shock. As Matson began to tell him what had happened, Stevens admits he found it hard to believe, though, given how sincere and genuinely frightened Matson appeared to be, he felt it best to notify the police, and they did. And this is when things took an even stranger turn. Police soon arrived on the scene and took a statement. They also investigated the tower room and discovered handprints on the wall inside the room. They immediately called for Mr. Droman, a chemistry teacher who was still on the premises, who quickly performed a chemical analysis of the prints. To his surprise, he discovered that they seemed to be made of blood. Whose blood? Nobody could tell. Charlie Stevens continued to suspect that his friend's sighting of a supposed vaporous man was merely a trick of light and shadows, or a possible hallucination. But that skepticism would soon fade away when, the very next night, Tuesday, October 26th, he too encountered this vapor man. Charlie claims that he was passing the outside entrance to the auditorium pretty late in the evening when he heard, quote, the most indescribable weird music I have ever heard. He peered into the window of the auditorium and saw something he could not believe. I looked into the window and saw playing the piano a creature which almost perfectly fits the description of the thing Bill Matson saw. Moonlight was streaming in on it, casting gloomy shadows. I stood petrified for a moment and then ran to my house and again called the police. According to the Tribune, police again arrived at the school and performed a search of the entire building, but found nothing out of the ordinary. In a statement released on October 27, Greeley High Principal Robert Gilchrist stated, "It is the most astounding thing I have ever heard of for a long time." Reporter Craig Vito concluded his report stating, "As this article is being published, nothing else has been heard or seen of the strange phenomenon." On October 17, 1998, reporter Mike Peters published an article titled "Things That Go Bump in the Night" for the Weld County Past-Times. He referred to the Greeley Central ghosts, noting, "Above the school stage, high up in a fourth-floor room, is the costume storage area known by drama students as the Tower. There has been a ghost in the tower story at Central for years. According to one drama teacher, the ghost is supposedly a student who hanged himself in the tower decades ago because he didn't get the lead in the school play." Peters added, "There's no record of such a death in the school." This story had a number of red flags for me. First, The story of a piano-playing, vaporous man who leaves bloody handprints just sounds, I don't know, a little over the top even for a ghost story. Not saying it couldn't happen because, well, there are a lot of ghost stories that are just really bizarre. But something about this one just struck me as odd. Second, the fact that this story seemed to play out just days from Halloween seems a little too convenient. Further, Peter's debunking of a claim that the Vapor Man, or boy, or whatever, was a student who hung himself also led me to believe that I was dealing with a possible hoax. And apparently I was right. In the October 26, 2018 edition of the Greeley Tribune, in an article titled "Boo, A History of Hauntings in Greeley," the paper does seem to concede that the Greeley Vapor Man story was just that, a story that had been written by a student back in 1937. The story was then planted in the school newspaper, which was then picked up by area papers as a legit ghost story, and the Greeley Central Tower ghost was born. Now, here's the kicker to the story. In the years since the creation of this non-existent ghost, there does seem to be something going on at Greeley Central, in that students near the tower room have claimed to have seen a strange, ghostly apparition wandering the halls. Even the Greeley Tribune, in the same article in which they debunked the 1937 story, admitted that students are still encountering something at that school. What that something is anyone's guess. Is it possible that over the years so many people at the school had discussed this Vapor Man entity that a tulpa was created and currently haunts that school? Curiously, in nearby Greeley West High School, students have described encountering a white mist-spewing apparition. They have also described disembodied voices and scratches. In fact, if you look into the history of hauntings in Greeley, Colorado overall, you will discover numerous reports involving shadow beings, phantom children, and apparitions described as looking like white mist or vapor. In keeping with the same time frame as the previous story, I want to discuss something strange that supposedly occurred in 1941 to a woman you might have heard about, Oscar-winning actress Shelley Winters. There really isn't a lot of information on this case. Timothy Green Beckley spent years collecting celebrity paranormal and UFO stories, and even he seemed to not have any info on this case in any of his books. Albert Rosales, author of the Humanoid Journals, noted that there was a brief reference to the case in Denny Brees' Project Bescaline database, a database of more than 2,300 humanoid cases, but not much else. Last I talked to Albert, he was going to try to reach out to Tim Beckley to see if he knew anything else about the Shelly Winters case. So, what happened, you're probably wondering? Okay, so for those not in the know, Shelly Winters was an American actress whose career spanned almost 6 decades. She won Academy Awards for The Diary of Anne Frank and The Amazing A Patch of Blue, and received nominations for A Place in the Sun and The Poseidon Adventure. Her Internet Movie Database page lists more than 160 projects, including movies and television shows. She also appeared on Broadway and occasionally worked as a singer. In 1941, 2 years before she would make her first appearance in the film There's Something About a Soldier, she had an experience of the absolutely baffling kind. In the Australian News Clipping Bulletin, there is an article dated April 30th, 1991, in which Shelley, in a TV interview, discussed an incident that happened in Malibu, California, in 1941, following a wartime party she had attended. She claims that as the party began to wind down, she went out to the beach alone and laid down on a lounger. She was relaxing, listening to the waves rolling in, looking up at the stars, when something came out of the ocean and began walking up the beach towards her. He emerged like a frogman, and I thought the Japanese might be invading, she recalled. It should be noted that her experience happened as World War II was raging, and some months before the events at Pearl Harbor. Tensions around the world were definitely high, and thoughts of countries invading each other were on people's minds. As he drew closer to her, Winters claimed she began to make out that the figure had reddish-colored skin and webbed hands. Dennis Breeze in his database added the detail that the creature was elfish in appearance. Possibly because she assumed it was some kind of joke or some other reason, Shelley claims that she merely greeted the thing. "I said, 'Hello there.' I wanted to be friendly," she recalled. At some point, the reddish-skinned entity walked up and stood over her. It then reached out and grabbed her around the waist. I looked into his eyes, and I'm not sure what physically happened next, but I felt all tingly, a very special feeling. Shelley's next memory was waking up on the beach sometime later and watching as the creature walked back out into the ocean. There was a message in the sand, apparently written by the entity, that she described as, quote, cryptic, though she would not go into detail about what it said. For over 50 years, Winters remained quiet about the experience, fearing it would hurt her ability to get work in the entertainment industry. The last thing she wanted was to be labeled a kook even before she landed her first film role. Given the passage of time, Winters recalls the experience as being more amusing than frightening. She concluded by stating that she never saw the entity again. "You'd think he would be able to write, or at least phone," she joked.